Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hi everyone, my name is Graselly. I'm from 5C class of English Education Department and now I want to present about experimental design. So before we start our discussing about experimental design, we should know what is experimental design. Experimental design is the traditional approach to conducting quantitative research. Experimental researchers test an idea or practice or procedure to determine its effects on an outcome. Researchers decide on an idea with which to experiment, assign individuals to experience it, and have some individuals experience something different, and then determine whether those who experience the idea or practice performed better on some outcome than those who did not experience it. So, when the experiments developed, the ideas used in experiments today were mostly in place by the first few decades of the 20th century. The procedures of comparing groups, assigning individuals to the treatments, and statistically analyzing group comparison had been developed by 1940. During the 1960s, the types of experimental designs were identified and strengthened. For example, control over potential threats of these designs specified by 1980. Since 1980, computers improved statistical procedures and more complex designs have advanced experimental research. And then, what are the types of experimental design? The most common design you will find in education research are the first between group design and the second within group or individual design. In the between group design, there has three types. The first is through experiments by using pre and post tests. Post tests only. The second quasi experiments using pre and post test or post test only. The third is factorial design. In the second design is within group or individual design. The first is time series experiments with interrupt equivalent, and the second repeated measures experience, and the third is single subject experiments. The types of between group design. The first, true experiments involve random assignment of participants to group or units. This from or an experiment is the most rigorous and controlled of all types. And then a quasi-experimental design involves the use of an interpretation but not random assignment of participants to groups. And then a factorial design also involves two or more groups, but the researcher tests for the interaction or two or more independent variables. And then, what are potential ethical issues in experimental research? Ethical issues in conducting experiments relate to withholding the experimental treatment from some individuals who might benefit from receiving it. The disadvantage that might occur from randomly assigning individual to groups. This assignment overlooks the potential need of some individuals for beneficial treatment. Ethical issues also arise as to when to conclude an experiment, whether the experiment will provide the best answer to a problem, and considerations about the stakes involved in conducting the experiment. So there are steps in conducting experimental research. The first is decide if an experiment addresses your research problem, and the second from hypothesis to trace cause and effect relationship, and the third is select an experimental unit and identify study participants, and the fourth select an experimental treatment and introduce it. The five choose types of experimental design, and the sixth
conduct the experiment, and the 7, organize and analyze
data.
and the 8 and the last is develop an experimental research report.
And now evaluate experimental research from Bosel, 19 and 94. Data, the experiment has a powerful intervention, and the second, the treatment group are few in number, and then participants will gain from the intervention, and then the researcher derive the number of participants per group in some systematic way.
and and then an educate number of participants were used in the study, and then the researcher uses measures and observations that are valid, reliable, and sensitive, and then the researchers control for extraneous factors that might influence the outcome, and then and the last, the researcher addresses threats to internal and external validity.
Okay, that's all my presentation. Thank you for watching this video. I'm sorry if I had mistake. Thank you for your attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.